Hour number 3 officially underway. We could do this all day. We can go for hour 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got this. It's Joe Neary. It's Donnie Rightside having some fun here. Post NCAA football action. Yes, we do have to wait till next August till we get back into the flow, but the conversations will always continue, which included from the SportsGrid network here, sending out a poll this morning. How good will Michael Penix Jr. be in the NFL? Backup, starter, all-pro, or MVP? Backup is leading the way at 51%. Now, I just wanted to continue the conversation from before the break here with you, Joe. The injury concerns, right? We know there's been major damage to those knees, but it's a quarterback. Should be able to get through that here, and certainly no ill effects at this point now. But you watched that game last night. He was scraping himself off the turf repeatedly and looked like he'd been through a war by the end of that game. That's a college football game. We know how tough it is to make it through an 18-week schedule in the NFL. So backup, is that more of an indictment here, Joe, for him not being a good football player? Or do we think like, well, he's destined to have like a Carson Wentz type career where maybe he flashes, but boy, that body's going to give out sooner than later?
Well, and again, Donnie, I think he's going to get a shot. Is he a number one guaranteed pick? No. Is he a first-round pick? Sure. There's only so many quarterback spots available, right? And there's only a handful of guys every year, Donnie, that get the kind of come into the NFL with the kind of experience he just got, right, to a national championship game, even though they came up a little bit short. His numbers speak for themselves in college. But the problem is what's going to determine Michael Penix Jr.'s success in the NFL is going to have to be at what coach and what organization does he land with. Because if he walks into a dysfunctional organization with no real game plan, no offensive coordinator, that they're going to try to make him fit into their plan. Coaching matters in the NFL with a guy like Michael Penix Jr. Don't forget, Trevor Lawrence was brought into the NFL, and they gave him Urban Meyer, and it almost destroyed him. So, hopefully he gets with an organization that'll be patient and will give him an opportunity and get the best out of him.
So welcome in the radio audience. You're watching and listening live to the Early Line right here on the SportsGrid Network, Sirius XM Channel 159. He's Joe Ranieri. I'm Donnie Rightside. Going over our SportsGrid poll, how good will Michael Penix Jr. be in the NFL? And those results, once again, back up 50% now. So at least that's coming down a little bit. Starter, 44.6%. All-Pro, 2.2%, and the MVP at 2.6%. Let me ask you this question on this poll, Joe, because I love how it's what we saw last. Let's just say that score was, 34-14, and it was for Washington, and Penix threw for 325, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. How might this poll odds be changed for that here?
It's a good point. Again, a lot of people had tickets on Washington last night. Why, though, did they have tickets on Washington? Because of the last thing they saw, recency bias. And what was the last thing they had seen? Well, they saw him throwing the ball all over the University of Texas there. And now, the day after, he's gone from first or second pick in this year's NFL draft to now he's barely a backup here. You can't listen. He's got all the intangibles you can't teach, right? He's got the size. He's a lefty. He's got the arm strength. He can make all the throws. He's a big dude. So, yes, he's going to get a shot in the NFL. But really, his talent is not really what's going to decide if he's a starter or if he's a backup. It's, don't go to the Jets. That's all I'm going to say. Let's hope the Jets don't draft him.
Running a true style pro offense, which obviously it's a lot of reads, a lot of keys you got to have. He got that experience. Threw for a ton of yards, ton of interceptions, and certainly not coming out of college as like a 19-year-old, like, hey, I entered college early and now I've only started 12 games. Like you talk about guys like, when Mitchell Trubisky makes that run at Carolina, like, well, hold on now. He's basically a quarterback for 10 games here. We don't have enough film. You have a ton of film on Penix here that you can make a decision. Yep. Let's have some fun with this topic, too, as well, because, again, it's about Michael Penix. I think he'll be a quality NFL quarterback. We'll see how good he actually is. But let's go if this poll was taken for J.J. McCarthy, who I saw come up. Mel Kiper said he's the 5th best quarterback prospect in this year's draft. Now, he is a great leader. We know that. It's hard to win national championship. The kid bought in and certainly has that locker room's ear, no doubt about it. but a quarterback that was relied on very rarely this year to pull out games. Case in point, your first real battle of the season was in Penn State. So how did they celebrate that, Joe? Hey, kid, don't throw a second-half pass here. That's kind of a tough look for a guy that's supposed to be going into the NFL looking for a long career. If we talk about it in his terms here, what do we expect out of J.J. McCarthy? He said there's a chance he comes back to Michigan next year. If he goes pro, like, what's his ceiling here? Because, quite frankly, I haven't seen a lot.
Well, he's tough because he's got a decision to make, right? Does an extra year at Michigan with all the changes and possibility a new coach, does he benefit at all next year coming out? Because this is a very quarterback-heavy draft coming out here. So, there's going to be a number of guys and a number of teams that are going to be willing to take a shot on somebody. So maybe this might, because of the uncertainty, maybe this is the year that you give it a go. Maybe he goes undrafted. That's also a possibility here because we've seen a lot of guys like him. Who was that guy that won that national championship for Georgia 2 years ago? The guy was there forever. What was it? Yeah. Where is he now? Yes. So where is he? So that's exactly my point, because I think he fits the mold of those kinds of quarterbacks that we have seen. Great programs, great college careers, and now you're on practice squads in the NFL.
Yes, Stetson Bennett was that guy. Was slipping my mind, which again is perfect here. This guy won multiple championships there. Like, who's that guy again? Because he didn't necessarily stick out or make a splash in the NFL. But in this day and age in college football, the Q's just like, hey, I got to be a pro because I have to make some money at this point. You got owners like, and I'm going to talk about like David Tepper down in Carolina, Stephen Ross down in Miami, that could just be like, hey, man, look, thank you for doing what you did for my alma mater. Here's $2 million. Come back, play, have some fun, and here's some money for you, and enjoy your life. Like, that's a new reality, which used to be in the past.
That's a great point.
If I saw Stephen Ross, I get a handshake and $100 bill. Like, no, he can actually write you a legitimate check for $2 million plus just for thank you for winning that and enjoy the rest of your college career at this point. But certainly, it'll be fun to watch this overall play out. But that is the new world here in college football. But for Michael Penix, I don't think he did himself a disservice. Michigan's defense is really good. They made a lot of quarterbacks look stupid here. So we'll see where he goes, and certainly a wonderful national championship, as it was said. But we are going to continue, Joe, here down the path in the NFL because it is wild card weekend, and we need to set that up. Craig Mish is going to come in and join us. You know what we're going to talk about next? Super Bowl odds and also some AFC, NFC odds here to try to design to make you money here heading towards it. Because, look, it's Tuesday. Saturday, we got that doubleheader. We need to be ready to make some money. That's what the SportsGrid Network is for, to get you ready to make some of that cash this weekend. Craig's coming up. We'll be right back.
Fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, a Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices. And we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division.
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby. The money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The Weiss said we're getting the Stanley Cup, so now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
it. Take a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
NFL action, it is fantastic. And whether you're flying around in a plane today, catching up, sitting in an Uber right now, having some fun, the NFL is the talk of the century. Why? Because we love Wild Card Weekend. Let's have some fun. Donnie Wright's out here along with Joe Ranieri. We are now going to bring in Craig Mish. And how about this? Usually the hot stove is heated up now. Now, Craig, we're going to start off here and have some fun in the NFL. Can you bring your Major League Baseball hot stove to Arrowhead Stadium in sub-freezing temperatures to warm it up? How you doing today, Craig?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yeah, I mean, look, this is, the Dolphins play in Miami Gardens. I live probably about 15 minutes away. Joe knows that. He doesn't live far either. And just to kind of see how that went down in the second half of that game, very unexpected to see the Dolphins play that poorly. But I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to play a lot better in Kansas City this week. I just don't think that the Chiefs have really proven a ton this year. So, I mean, look, Kansas City may win that game, Donnie, but I think that when the line came out and you saw that the Chiefs were only 3-point favorites at home in that environment, and these are the same odds makers that saw the Dolphins get smacked around by the Bills on Sunday night. I mean, I think that tells you all you need to know. I think we're in for a close game.
Craig, any surprises to you heading into the playoffs? Because the wild card round is fantastic. I love it. But we were saying, Pittsburgh probably on the outside looking in. Jacksonville should be able to handle their business. Are we looking at any of these teams that say, like, hey, it's a second life now. It's a rebirth. We're in the playoffs. It's 0-0. Any of those teams catch your attention and say, you know what? I didn't expect them to be here, but maybe we could do some damage.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Donnie, if the Rams can do damage because I do think the Lions played very well all season, but if we go back to September to predict that the Rams would have been in this spot, especially after the year that they had last year, and even some of the problems that they had with injuries during the middle of the season with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford, you probably wouldn't have thought that the Rams would have this opportunity where they're only catching 3 points or 3.5 points in Detroit. So I think it's the feel-good story of the week with Goff getting revenge, Stafford going back home. But to me, the Rams are that team, Donnie, that I really couldn't have foreseen this back in September or October. There were so many other teams in the NFC that I thought would be better than them. And, specifically Seattle. I mean, Seattle played so well last year. They were playing well at the beginning of this year. I wouldn't have predicted the Rams to be in this spot, legitimately catching only 3 points with a chance to move on if they can beat Detroit on Monday.
So, Greg, we got extra games, right? More playoff teams, a little bit different this year. But what we've got a ton of right now is injuries on a number of these teams here. Usually they tend to get overblown here, but when you look at what's going on with the Eagles right now, the Dolphins have no more linebackers. I mean, you go down the list of injuries. Sam Laporta now is not going to be available for Detroit. how big it's got to be baked into the line, but how big an issue in this weekend do you think these injuries are going to play for a team? Any value in fading the idea that teams are done because they're so injured?
Yeah, well, Joe, I mean, look, Miami's got a lot of injuries, so everyone's aware of that going in this with a lot of the players on the defensive side of the ball. But I think I struggle to look at a defensive player and ask myself, are they worth a half a point or a point in the NFL? The only injury that may be on the board that would indicate that to me, who maybe is worth a half a point, I don't think a point, Joe, but maybe a half, is TJ Watt. That's the only one that I would look at and say, if he was not able to play against Buffalo, boy, that would be a huge loss for them. But that being said, the Bills, to me, have not played well for the majority of the season to be 10-point favorites against any team in the National Football League. I mean, I just don't – is there a huge difference from Pittsburgh to the way that the Chargers played the Bills a couple of weeks ago, and the Bills were 13-point favorites? They barely won that game. So even if Watt doesn't play, I expect that game to be a close game too. I guess at this stage of the game, I'm very hesitant to lay double-digit points in any NFL game, let alone playoffs, and regular season, almost never do it.
And also, Craig, in that game, too, you take a look at those 10 points. That's 20-degree temperatures and 25-mile-an-hour winds expected in that game. So maybe would be a slugfest leaning towards those points. Might make some sense. We'll get to the Super Bowl odds in just a little bit here, Craig. But let's focus on the AFC. The Ravens at a plus 125 favorite here at the FanDuel Sportsbook to win the AFC. Is there a team outside of, like, the Ravens and the Bills? Like, can the Chiefs, recapture that magic? The Miami Dolphins reinvigorate themselves in the playoffs on the road as opposed to at home? And I know a lot of people zeroing in on the Cleveland Browns at a 12-1 price, saying, you know what, Donnie, there's value there. Value in the AFC for you, Craig. Where are you going?
I think the Browns is a good example of a team that is entering the playoffs very similar to how the Bengals were a couple of years ago, where really no one expected them to make that run all the way to the Super Bowl. And then there we were in February watching Joe Burrow play there. Now I understand it's a different Joe. It's Joe Flacco in this one. But you're right. I think the Browns are definitely that possibility. I think the winner of Miami, Kansas City is going to be a factor down the stretch in January here. And I think that either team has a chance to go to Baltimore and win that game. I mean, for me, when I look at the AFC and the NFC picture, I understand that Baltimore's peaking at the right time and San Francisco has had a fantastic season. Philadelphia's completely fallen apart. But I just, listen, watching the NFL and looking at wagering the last 2 decades, it's so rare to have those two favorites playing each other in the Super Bowl. I just simply can't believe that we know right now it's going to be 49ers, Ravens, and those are the two betting favorites. I would say one of those two teams gets knocked out before the end.
It's interesting, too. How would you rate, because coaching matters in these spots. Experience matters, right? So nobody's got more experience than Andy Reid or Harbaugh, for that matter. But some of these, like McVay versus Dan Campbell, some of these coaching matchups, it feels like it's a mismatch here on some levels here. You talked about Sirianni. It feels like that team is completely falling apart. Top 3 coaches here that you're looking at, is it McVay, Andy, and Harbaugh, and guys that you can count on and bet to know they're going to have their teams ready to get it done?
It's actually none of them, Joe. I would say for me, the number one guy, especially the fact that they were 10-7 and got in again, I'll go back to it. It's Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. I mean, guys, when you look at the Steelers, is there a huge difference between the Steelers and the Carolina Panthers right now? Like, honestly, is there really that much of a disparity between those two teams? Is there a huge disparity between, let's say the Tennessee Titans and Pittsburgh Steelers? Like, I don't know how they do it every year. They kind of do it with smoke and mirrors. So, look, I don't think Pittsburgh's going to go to Buffalo and win the game outright, but I got to tell you, it would not shock me at all based on what we've seen the last few years. And Buffalo on Sunday night, once again, did not play well. They at all. Yep. The Dolphins just couldn't get out of their own way in the second half of that game. So, for me, it is Tomlin having those guys ready to play. There was a blip during the season for about 2 or 3 games where they looked like they were out of it, and now here they are back. And Tomlin, how many playoff appearances? How many Super Bowls? I mean, to me, he's got to be the best guy remaining left in terms of coaching.
Then you're right about the Buffalo Bills, too, heading down the stretch. Yeah, they had some big wins, but also some close calls against some bad football teams. And lest we forget, entering into the fourth quarter, the Bills were down 14-7 in that game before a 95-plus yard punt return touchdown to get them back into it. Craig, let's focus on the Super Bowl odds. Number one here, the San Francisco 49ers plus 220, the Baltimore Ravens plus 320, all the way down are those Pittsburgh Steelers at 130-1. Not saying to win the championship here, but so many of us will take a ticket saying, you know what, I think this can make us some money. Is there a team with the Super Bowl odds that you're betting right now saying, you know what, I think this team can make me some money?
Yeah, I think Detroit would be the team. I do think they're going to beat the Rams, and I never take favorites in the NFL, but I do think they're going to win this week. I think they have a chance to win a second game, too, and then it would come down to whether or not they would have to go to San Francisco or perhaps San Francisco gets knocked out. But who scares you outside of the 49ers if they were to lose? Is it Dallas on the road? Not so much. Is it Philadelphia right now? Not so much. The Lions, when push comes to shove, have played 3 horrible football games this year and every other game they've been in. So I think the Lions are that team that potentially could surprise some teams. I don't love the idea of Detroit going to San Francisco in January and Goff winning that game. So that would be a no-go for me. But I think the Lions can beat anybody else on the road.
It should be interesting to watch it play out. Craig Mitch, our MLB insider, talking some hot stove in the NFL. Let's keep this NFL talk continuing right here on the early line.
Fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices. And we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cup, so now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The new season, the new tournament is set to begin here. No, it's not the in-season tournament in the NBA. It's the NFL Playoffs Wild Card Edition this weekend. 2 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, and a Monday night football game. But obviously, we want to cover the board here. We want to make sure we have everybody informed before the playoffs even begin. And that means looking forward to the Super Bowl MVP odds. Now, keep an eye on this one. This isn't a culmination of how well you played throughout the playoffs and the Super Bowl to win this award. No, your team has to make this football game, but can you be getting a discount if your team makes it and you pick the correct MVP odds? Joe, if we take a look currently at the FanDuel Sportsbook, to win Super Bowl MVP, Lamar Jackson is at a 4-1 price. If you take the Ravens to win the Super Bowl, that's a plus 320 price. Brock Purdy is a 5-1 price to win MVP in the Super Bowl. If you take the 49ers outright, it's plus 220. Before we get into the players that you want to take here, is this a smart way of betting in most instances by just saying, hey, look, if this team wins the Super Bowl, it's because this guy did it. I'll take the better price. Talk to me about the philosophy behind betting the Super Bowl MVP as opposed to betting just the Super Bowl champion.
Well, you got to go process of elimination, right? So which one on that list, Donnie, cannot win without the play of the quarterback, right? Which team is built where, are we convinced, can Buffalo win it all without Josh Allen? No. The 49ers are the interesting one. And listen, Lamar's in that same ballpark too as well. So I do think the 49ers are the unique ones because I can make an argument for 3 guys: Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. There is a number of guys, the way that system works with the 49ers, that any one of them could play a huge part in why that team is successful on any given day. The rest of those teams there, I don't trust as much. So I think if you're going to get a decent number on that, you got to figure out, all right, which one of these teams do I like to win it, and who can they absolutely not win it without, and that is going to be your MVP.
There's some funny numbers here because, again, the betting markets push these numbers around. It's not as if they're just holding firm and fast on some of these numbers. Like, hey, you know what? If Kansas City wins, I'm just going to take Mahomes. Well, Kansas City to win it is 10-1. Mahomes to win MVP, it's 10-1. But I sort of in that same boat here with Lamar Jackson. Like, how could the Ravens be plus 320, Lamar be 4-1? Like, they get to the Super Bowl and win it. It's like, hey, Lamar had a bad day here, so let's give it to somebody on the defense. Like, no, it feels like that would have to happen here. And Josh Allen, again, an 8-1 price to win it, with the Buffalo Bills coming in at a plus 650 price. The only guy out there also even with his team here, it looks like, is Jalen Hurts at a 17-1 price to win it, and the Philadelphia Eagles currently with a 17-1 price here to win that as well. So if we're setting up the market on the MVP odds, it is interesting, and you are correct. Now, we've seen some, back in the day, like Timmy Smith of the Washington, used to be Redskins, now Commanders, winning the Super Bowl here and coming out of nowhere to sort of have that like 200-yard day. Is there a guy that we could anticipate outside of these top guys saying like, hey, this is the guy that's going to win? Is it the Gus Bus runs for 4 touchdowns as an MVP in the Super Bowl, Joe?
Well, or CeeDee Lamb. Can CeeDee Lamb have a 11 catch, $175 performance? To me, I think it's the Christian McCaffrey bus. I mean, he is truly the one non-quarterback that is fully capable of taking it and overtaking a game, and you can't win it without him. And I'm not talking just like not just a one in a million type of game for a guy, because anybody can have that. But we're talking about a guy that has consistently done it time and time and time again. It's not a running back league here, so to speak, unless you are the 49ers and you ain't winning without Christian McCaffrey, period. I don't care who else goes down. You ain't winning without Christian McCaffrey.
You know what's interesting, too, because as you slide down, there are some massive numbers. So, like, let's just say you think that, I don't know, the Pittsburgh Steelers can win the Super Bowl, right? And you say, well, who's probably going to be the MVP? Like, Najee Harris is 750-1. Like, if the Steelers win the Super Bowl, it's 130-1 at that point? There are some wild numbers and some decent football players. Like, I think Gus was way down there, too. I just had him pulled up. 150-1 to win MVP in the Super Bowl here. So he pops in 2 or 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, even if they're 1 or 2 yard runs. That's a massive payout as opposed to saying, okay, I got a 5-1 price or whatnot here for the Baltimore Ravens to win the Super Bowl. So
is there
certainly
a defensive
fun way to play that
person on there? Anybody for defense?
On here. There has to be.
I'm trying to scroll. That number must be huge.
650 to 1 is Chris Jones. I'm looking at way down the list here. Hassan Reddick, 500 to 1. So Myles Garrett, by the way, 450 to 1.
That's a great one.
You can see him popping up there, Joe. Yeah. There you go. Nick Bosa, 85 to 1. So you got some guys that could do some damage at some massive prices, even though I know, like, hey, it's not good to bet a defender. They really don't win it. Well, hey, at that price point here, you might be making yourself some money. How about matching up the Super Bowl matchups here and making some money? The Ravens and the Cowboys, 9 to 1. The Ravens and the Lions, 22 to 1. Anything in that market, bring it up, or is it just like, hey, Ravens Niners, plus 290. I'll sit on that and relax.
Well, I love Bills Cowboys and harken it back to some of the good old days there with Jim Kelly and company there not being able to beat Troy Aikman. This is, I think this market is a pretty good market to dabble in here, to correlate it with some of the teams that you think are just going to, win these games and continue to move over. Because like we had mentioned earlier, the Bills, you already missed the boat on the best price of the Bills here, keeping in mind that they were about, 20 to 1 in December. So you're going to be paying a premium now to bet some of these teams. But this kind of market where, hey, if I've got the Bills and I know the Bills are my AFC, well, then you can parlay that with a couple of other teams there that you think in the NFC might have a shot and come up with some pretty big numbers there when it's all said and done.
Now, as we gear up here for the wild card round here, obviously we have the divisional round, the championship round, and then the Super Bowl. The FanDuel Sportsbook does have an interesting betting market here, Joe, that's kind of fun. The NFL Playoff Specials market, which means most passing yards for the playoffs, most rushing yards, and most receiving yards. Let's start here because off the top, because most people say, hey, I just want to go with the best passer. Now, keep in mind, some teams are capped at the amount of games they can play. For instance, the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers, should they make a Super Bowl run, they're not going to get that maximum of play 3 before you get there and you get that extra game. But then again, they're probably more likely to win those games, therefore, by playing more than, let's just say, Jordan Love, who's a favorite, not even to get through wild card weekend. Dak Prescott at a plus 250 price is the leader in the clubhouse here. Brock Purdy at 4 to 1, Josh Allen at 5 to 1, all the way down to Mason Rudolph at 50 to 1. So would it be just so simple for you to say, well, I think San Francisco is getting there, I'll just lay it with Brock Purdy? Or is there a chance that you could see that upset and say, like, maybe Jalen Hurts at a 20 to 1 price, if he has to play all 4 games, which include the Super Bowl, can take that down? Any interest in that market, or better yet, who do you actually think has the best chance at winning that market to have the most playoff passing yards?
Well, don't forget, again, all of this correlates to what you eventually think is going to be the big game, right? So correlate it that way. I can see, there's 3 guys I think that are going to be asked to throw more than some other people. You mentioned Dak, right? Think that's absolutely feasible there. I do think if you are a Detroit backer, there's no way Jared Goff's not going to be asked to chuck the ball around. And Matt Stafford is another guy that is absolutely going to be asked to throw the ball here, and it could be a lot. So some of the other guys, I think the running games for some of these teams might be better with the rushing props, who's going to have the most rushing yards in a series. But I think Josh Allen, Jared Goff, and Stafford, whoever wins that series and eventually moves on, could very well take over the top spot there for the most passing yards.
Let's do the same thing here with that rushing market. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is going to be the favorite of the clubhouse here at the FanDuel Sportsbook at a 2 to 1 price. James Cook of the Buffalo Bills behind him at 5 to 1. Then it starts to get interesting. Tony Pollard, who's the clear lead dog in Dallas, at a 6 to 1 price. Kyron Williams, who's been unbelievable down the stretch for the Rams, at a 10 to 1 price. Isaiah Pacheco, 12 to 1. DeAndre Swift, 16 to 1. In this marketplace here, is it so simple just to say it's going to be McCaffrey? Because if they are the favorites to get to the Super Bowl, that's 3 games. You could probably pencil in 300 yards. But if they do get upset, there are some legitimate contenders here that can pile up those rushing yards. Who do you believe should be the rightful factor here of taking down most playoff rushing yards?
Well, you also got to take into consideration, Donnie, with these teams for both passing and rushing. Who's playing outdoors in sub-zero temperatures where you're probably not getting a lot of passing yards. You're probably going to get more rushing opportunities. And as it goes along, right, who benefits the most? Well, we know Baltimore is going to have home field advantage there, right? But they got to buy, so do the 49ers. Both of those teams will play in places where maybe weather is not going to be as big a factor. But along the way, some of these other teams are going to play in 30-mile-an-hour winds. And, that's to me where I would look at some of the rushing guys there and say, if this team's going to advance, Donnie, they're going to have a huge day on the ground, like Swift, for instance, might very well have to carry the Eagles.
It's a great point you bring up because you can also equate that market to the receivers as well. Hey, I love Tyreek Hill. He's the main in that offense for the Dolphins while they're going to play in 0-degree temperatures where 4 catches for 38 yards might be an unbelievable day, even in a victory at that point. CeeDee Lamb, by the way, Joe, the leader in the clubhouse at 2-1, but the rest of the way, you're getting some really good numbers. Ayuk 8-1, Diggs 10-1, Amon-Ra St. Brown 10-1. Any of these pass catchers catch your mind. And you'll keep in mind, Travis Kelce 25-1 listed there.
Yeah. I think there are a few guys. Keep an eye on the weather and who eventually will get the most home games. That's probably where that market lands.
Let's see if we can find some value there. But even though we talked a lot of football this morning, there's a lot of action going on in college and professional basketball. We'll talk about it next.
Fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, a Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cup, so now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, we tackled the NFL playoffs all the way around, Super Bowl odds, MVP odds, who's going to lead the league in rushing, in passing, and receiving here throughout the playoffs. We have had multiple chances to get down and have some fun there, but there is still other sports here, Joe Ranieri, going on today, and that includes college basketball and the NBA. But I want to start here in college basketball, a top 20 tilt in the Big 12. So wait a minute, Baylor, BYU, Big 12? Yes. Get used to all these changes, which included to college football coming your way next year. If we line this game up here, BYU's coming into this one plus 3.5 as an underdog price at the FanDuel Sportsbook, plus 152 currently right now on the money line, and a total of 154.5. If we're setting the table for this game, yeah, we think it's going to be a pretty good game. But how about this for Baylor's offense, Joe? Number one in the nation at shooting the three-point shot, 45% as a team. Usually you're lucky to get one guy on your team shoot 39% for the season. As a team, shooting close to 50%. But how about this? The BYU defense comes into this game, top 5 in the nation at defending the three-point line. BYU, live from Baylor. What happens in this game? Where are we going?
Well, live by the 3, die by the 3, Donnie. You've got a couple of things working out here. First of all, BYU in the Big 12. Yeah, welcome to your new conference, BYU, right? So how did they open up conference play? Well, in Provo last week, Donnie, and they ended up getting crushed by Cincinnati as almost a double-digit favorite. Why? Because 46 of the 64 shots they took were from 3, and guess what? When you only hit 28% of those shots, you could very well lose a game. So I love the 3. They love the 3. Baylor loves the 3, but these teams are very susceptible to off shooting nights, and they have no second pitch, Donnie, which would worry me. Foster Pavilion's the new stadium for Baylor, the new arena. They get to open up conference play there tonight. I would lean Baylor to get it done at home because home court still matters a little bit here in college basketball.
By the way, you're right about that, too, because when you take a look at the Baylor offense, yes, they're number one overall, but that's not number one and also volume number one overall. They're 220th in the country at taking three-point shots. But flip it over to BYU, who actually is a very good shooting team from the arc here, coming in at 37%, which is top 50 in the country. But they're actually number 3 overall at volume from three-point range. If you want to live by the 3 and die by the 3, you watch BYU tonight, because if you're shooting a half of your shots from three-point range and making them at a high number, there's nothing that Baylor can actually do to beat BYU. But if you're not on from three-point range, could be a runaway there for Baylor in this game. But a great matchup here in early January. Let's move it over maybe here, Joe, for some Hilton magic. That is from Ames, Iowa. That is Houston, number 2 in the country, coming to town to take on Iowa State. Houston, perfect on the season at 14-0, 1-0 in the Big 12. You take a look at Iowa State, 11-3 here, and also an 0-1 Big 12 mark. Lining this game up, short price here for Houston at the FanDuel Sportsbook, a minus 2.5-point favorite, a total of 130.5. Are we getting Hilton magic, or is Houston just too tough for those Cyclones?
I mean, listen, 14-0, right? The only undefeated team in the country here, Houston. And why? Because they have the number 1 defense in the country. But not too far behind from a defensive standpoint is this Iowa State team, where they preach suffocating defense here, and they've got a lot of experience on this team. These are, listen, a lot of people very high on Iowa State this year. Through this point in the season, though, without a doubt, the most impressive group has been the Cougars, although they haven't really played the greatest schedule, but it is what it is. I am looking very forward to seeing how Houston on the road in a very hostile environment here at Iowa State, are they as good as they have shown us to be against everyone else? I tend to think they are, especially in the first half, Donnie. Nobody, and I mean nobody, puts teams away quicker than Houston. If it's an off night for Iowa State, Houston goes in with a double-digit lead. They cover the first, and then it's smooth sailing from there.
Yeah, it just feels like the boa constrictor of college basketball is Houston. They just take the life out of your program here and really clamp down on defense. Let's keep it moving in the Big 12. Top 25 team here. The Texas Longhorns come into this game against the Cincinnati Bearcats, 11-3, but 0-1 in the Big 12. Cincinnati 12-2 on the season here from the Queen City, 1-0 in the Big 12 currently as it sits right now. If we're lining this game up at the FanDuel Sportsbook, how about this? Texas as the top 20 team against an unranked team. They're catching the 4.5 points, a total of 145.5. Technically an upset in the rankings, but as we know as handicappers, not an upset when Cincinnati, if they do win this game.
No, well, and Texas has played absolutely nobody. And then when they finally did play a team in Texas Tech, guess what? They lost. And why did they lose? They were a 7-point favorite. And they lost to Texas Tech. And wait a minute, if I'm not mistaken, Donnie, that game might have been in Texas. And now you've got to go on the road to take on a Cincinnati Bearcats team who we just told you is way better than the market thinks here. Provo is not an easy place to go and play and win, Donnie, and yet it's exactly what they did. And they did it with great defense, great perimeter defense, and not a lot of second chance points. I think Texas is overrated. I think Cincinnati wins this game, and I think they win it rather easily.
There you go. Keep it moving here as we take a look on the Peacock Network, which keep in mind, if you're not interested in the Peacock Network, you might not be watching the most playoff football you can this weekend, but that's neither here nor there right now. Purdue's number one team in the nation going in and taking on those Nebraska Cornhuskers. Purdue 14-1 on the season, 3-1 in the Big Ten. Nebraska comes into this one 12-3 on the season, 2-2 in the Big Ten. Lining this game up here on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Purdue on the road, a minus 7.5 point favorite, a total of 150.5. Purdue a few weeks back went on the road and lost in Big Ten play, but they've been perfect since then. Is Purdue going to be able to handle their business tonight against those Cornhuskers, Joe?
Yeah, Fred Hoiberg and crew there at Nebraska kind of padded the non-conference schedule against nobodies, and they have ripped off a lot of big wins and created some great numbers, but there are levels to this here, and I think Purdue got the losing out of the way early. They can't beat Northwestern anyway, so, you move on from there. I just think this is too much Purdue. Even on the road, I just think Nebraska's a little overrated because of the non-conference schedule. I think Purdue, I think they blow them out rather easily, just like what they did to Illinois.
Power inside. We'll see if it continues here, but it's great to see everybody getting involved here in conference play in early January as we start to transition over to those dog days of February and then right into March Madness. Let's flip it over and talk a little professional basketball tonight. There are 5 games on the card. The first game we'll take a look at, Joe, 7 p.m. Eastern, 5:41, 5:42 on the rotation. That's the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Orlando Magic. This line opened up with the FanDuel Sportsbook as a favorite here for the Timberwolves at minus 3 points. We now sit here at minus 5 points. So a 2-point line move in the favor of the road team, Minnesota Timberwolves. The Orlando Magic and the Timberwolves lining up here, and this is rare. A 220.5 number dropping to a 217.5 number and 216.5 at some other outlets. Timberwolves, Magic. What gives in this one for you, Joe?
Well, 2 pretty good defensive teams here, I would say, that have a lot of length, have a lot of athleticism. The problem is the injuries have been piling up for them. Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr., a lot of these guys have been banged up here. But all in all, I think anytime we look at a Minnesota game or an Orlando game, I tend to lean towards the under in these kinds of games. The pace is not going to be there. The defense will, I think, for both sides here. So I'm looking at the under in this matchup.
How about this one? The 3-win Pistons get excited. Joe Ranieri taking on the Sacramento Kings. They are at home, the Pistons. They are dogs by 11 points currently at the FanDuel Sportsbook. The total in this one, 240. We're taking a look. I believe Cade Cunningham will be out for at least 7 to 10 days, so they won't have their young phenom to even go with it. Is there any chance that those Detroit Pistons, or should I say, will you be backing the Detroit Pistons with 11.5 points taking on the Kings tonight, Joe?
Yeah, listen, I don't hate it. Sacramento has been hit or miss, right? So I don't know exactly what we're going to get on a consistent basis from Sacramento, which bothers me, thinking they can go on the road and just beat the Pistons by 1 million. They're going to win, but I'm not running to the window to lay 11 with this Kings team yet.
How about this, though? Let's keep it on in the Garden. The Portland Trailblazers and the New York Knicks, they'll tip it off at 7:30 p.m. tonight, 5:43, 5:44 on the rotation. Heavy favorite for those Knicks at minus 11.5. Opening line now up to 12 here at the FanDuel Sportsbook, a total of 227.5. The Knicks playing some really good basketball here. The new OG in town might be a difference maker after all for the Knicks. What are we looking at tonight in the Garden? Too many points, or do the Knicks run away here?
Well, I mean, this is a train you may not want to get in front of, and it's a well-rested train. But isn't Portland just a giant pain? Every time they're a double-digit dog on the road, Donnie, they come in, and then what do? They end up either beating you outright or causing all sorts of issues here. They got blown out by Dallas a couple of games ago. Then what'd they do? They went to Brooklyn as almost a 10-point dog and won that game outright. I think this is a tricky spot for the Knicks. Ultimately, I think they win, but it would not shock me if Portland keeps this thing within this number.
How about this one? Late night West Coast action, Crypto.com Arena. That's rotation number 547, 548. That's the Toronto Raptors and the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers fresh off a victory here against the Clippers. The number in this game opened up at the FanDuel Sportsbook at -5. Currently sitting -5 here, so not much of a difference. Also, take a look at the total in this game, 235.5. LeBron James and the Lakers anticipated in the starting lineup, both LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Does a win streak start here now, Joe?
Yeah, could you believe it? I mean, it was a great win against the Clippers, although the Clippers kind of shot themselves in the foot in that game. But, you know, usually you don't get win-win trades, Donnie, in the NBA. But could this Knicks-Toronto deal be win-win for both of them? Because this Toronto team, they got some offense here, and I don't trust the Lakers going back-to-back here. So Toronto, I think, might have some value in this game.
Let's talk about value, the value of Darvin Ham's contract to the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, are all the good vibes now back because they won a game and maybe can go on a win streak and get 2 in a row? Or are we just buying our time? Are we seeing in the next week to 10 days Darvin Ham released as head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers and insert LeBron James as a player coach for all intents and purposes?
Yeah, well, ask LeBron because Ham will be there as long as LeBron signs off on it. The minute LeBron is done. Isn't it amazing here? When you're losing, it's everyone's fault but your own. This is one of the things that has always driven me crazy about LeBron over the years. It's not your fault. It's everybody else's fault. And the first person we always go to is the scapegoat is the coach. Oh, it's the coach's problem. Oh, it's the Darvin Ham's problem. Like, are you serious? Figure it out here. LeBron and Anthony Davis and D'Angelo Russell. You know, it ain't the coach's fault. What's a new coach going to bring to this table exactly here, Donnie? I'm curious. But
what
you're
it's going
still
to bring to
taking
the
orders
table
from LeBron.
is exactly. Hey, LeBron, what would you like? Steak tonight? You want baked potato? You want some champagne? What do you really need at this point? Yeah, exactly. There's not really too much to bring to the table other than just say yes when LeBron James says he wants to go into the game and who he wants to play with during that game here. Also, quick take a look here at the NBA Player Awards. Tied now at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, both at a plus 230 price here. How about that? Down the stretch we come for the early line. Get some picks out for the people next. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices. And we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take a little
it.
piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Yes, a good time was had by all this morning on Tuesday of the Early Line right here on the SportsGrid Network. Donnie Wrightside here with Joe Ranieri, bringing you up to date on everything you needed, which included an extensive look at this weekend's wild card action in the NFL. But during this last segment of the show, we like to leave the people with something. Yesterday, Joe Ranieri, we had a little triple play or triple option for the college football championship game. Perfect 3-0 for your boy DRS. So we're going to ride a hot streak into this. But as a great guest of the show, Joe Ranieri, I'm going to let you take center stage first. Give the people out there something to chew on tonight and maybe a winning bet that they can look at.
Oh, I kind of like I like where you're going there, and I also kind of like a blowout in Dallas tonight. Ooh. As John Morant will not be available for this team, which means since he's having surgery, we're going to go back to pre-John Morant blowout days, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. Get it before it gets to double digits, 8.5, 9 now. I think Dallas runs them all. Too much firepower for Dallas with Kyrie back. Not enough firepower here for Memphis to keep up.
By the way, for Memphis, I mean, you would take a look at John Morant, sits out the first 25 games. They can't find themselves or get a win to save their life. He comes back, injects some life back into the franchise, and then down for the year. And by the way, the interesting part about that, like slight shoulder separation, a little bit of a tear. I'm like, okay, that's a couple weeks, maybe, a month and a half. Like, no, he's down for the year. So a tough scene for Memphis. I'm going to go, however, on the West Coast. I'm going to take a LeBron James prop tonight. Over 2.5 3-point shots made. He's done 2 out of the past 3 games. It's a plus 132 price. If we're looking to get on that win streak, and also, nobody likes changes unless you make them yourself. So if LeBron James does actually like Darvin Ham, they better start winning some basketball games. They won 1. I think they can make it 2 in a row tonight, but LeBron James certainly will be a big part of that. Over 2.5 3-point shots made at a plus 132 price. Well, that'll do it for today's show here for the Early Line on a Tuesday morning, January 9th edition. Joe Ranieri. Hey, man, thanks for the time today. Love you. My God.
We'll see you again
soon. He handled it.
Go, Ben.
Maybe even tomorrow morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I got an update here I got to do.